work that you love, and you won't have to work another day. And I think that that's a fair assessment of our dear friend Carlos. Carlos, this is one that I don't urge you to do, and I hope you never will. I don't feel old. I don't feel anything until noon. Then it's my time for my nap. Bob Hope. Our life, exempt from public haunt, finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stone, and good in everything. And based on my association with you, Carlos, I think that you found good in everything. And I really, really, really appreciate that. Life begins at a quest of the child for the man and ends as a journey by the man to rediscover the child. So Carlos, keep on that journey. Enjoy life. We have so much appreciated you. Thanks so very, very much. And thanks for all of you for being here. And I think that this is the last thing you have to hear from me, at least for now.
And Carlos had the most diverse group of students. You never knew who the next one was going to be. They could be a tall, skinny black guy or a short blonde, or you never knew what they were going to be because they were just, Carlos didn't ever see anything but the talent of our students, and he always attracted people who wanted to be part of his group. It's hard for me to separate UTD from Carlos because he was here. He was an old timer by the time I got here. He'd been at UTD for 3 whole years. So, I think every department needs somebody like Carlos. Somebody that is just there all the time, always trying to find a new angle, always trying to find a way to get students involved with research. And I think it's wonderful that I got to interact with him. And the question is, do we need more than one Carlos in a department? And I think on that one, we would probably say probably one is enough, but Carlos, you certainly earned your retirement, and we hope you're not a stranger around the department. You'll always have a place to hang out and enjoy.
And I'm sure we all remember the first time that we met Carlos. Pretty sure that's a vivid memory. And the first thing, you realize that this guy is not like a lot of the other people that you've met. But as time went by and I got to know Carlos better, I realized that he spent a lot of time on the phone. Now you got to remember, this is before there was internet, and the telephone was the primary means of actually communicating rather than just playing games and watching movies and stuff. So, in fact, Carlos was on the phone so much it was a bit of a joke around the department. And
the joke wasn't in my bill.
No. And what I came to understand was that Carlos was a node. So in those days, we didn't think about networks so much. Now we're all very aware of networks and different kinds of networks. But what I came to understand was Carlos was this node in this network of geophysics and geoscience. He was this connection where all these diverse filaments sort of came together. And anybody that was connected to the Carlos node could get connected to, an awful lot of weird stuff. And so it began. All through Carlos. I had no idea that I would ever have a job at UTD, but I was stuck to Carlos, so there I was. I think a lot of us have had this experience. I think it's not unique to me. One of the things that I'll always remember about Carlos is the wonderful, weird, diverse
things that would sort of filter into my life through him. And friends that I've had for decades, things I'll fondly remember. Thanks, Carlos.
Okay, I have known Carlos from the first day that I arrived at UTD. So I have seen most of the both good and unusual events in his career. He has a reputation for being somewhat disorganized, but he always somehow seems to emerge unscathed. I have visited him in a hospital more times than any other geoscience faculty member. He has a habit of overspending accounts and not following state protocols for purchasing and travel, and being late for meetings, often for things like student defenses. Kyung has to get him on the phone and find out where he's at, see how long it will take him to get to the meeting he forgot. So this is a little bit at odds with the fact that Carlos has always been at the leading edge of acquiring and using electronic toys, as John just mentioned. And he's still constantly on the phone. When I came in the door today, he was plugged in with his earbuds. Okay. No. You see what I mean? He has probably lost more field equipment than all of the rest of the faculty combined. This includes GPS receivers, radios, and even a gravity meter that I think never got back from, where was it, Colombia? Ecuador. Okay. And I don't know if it was the same trip or a different one, but the crew was detained in the jungle by a local tribe that apparently had a serious debate about whether to let him go or to kill him. And so he got a movie credit for that work, which is a little bit unusual for a geophysicist. On the other hand, if you think about this, it's really fitting for Carlos because he's always been a really serious movie buff. As his social skills, as a storyteller, and as an entertainer. One of the perhaps most important legacies that he has is the admiration and the respect that he has earned from his students. You can see that many of you in the room today have done extremely well since graduating in your careers. And a lot of this can be attributed to both the personal skills as well as the technical aspects of the discipline that you learned from Carlos. So, Carlos, I appreciate you as a friend as well as a colleague. I wish you all the best in your retirement.
So I first met Carlos when I interviewed, and I remember talking to him a little bit. I think he was just starting out with this laborious scanning of surfaces and getting into the cyber geology. And I remember sitting in his office, and I think you had gravity maps up everywhere, and I could not figure out what the heck you did, because you talked about one thing and you had maps and whatnot of something else. And I came to see that you're, as you say, an expert at reinventing yourself. So every 10 years or so, it seems like you have become a completely different geologist, and that's always somewhat of an inspiration to me. It's nice to be able to pick up new ideas and move into new fields. Being a sort of person that always had to have the latest and greatest toys, he was good at creative financing. So I also remember him convincing me to part with a fair amount of my startup funds to help you buy your first TopCon, for instance. And and I think, yeah, I think you did that to a couple other assistant professors that came through too. So why go farther than down the hall if you can get the money? It's been really wonderful. And you all, if you haven't heard some of his stories, we did work a little bit together in Nevada, so I'd get to hear stories about, like why the police in Seattle knew him so well when he was growing up. I don't remember any Army stories for some reason, but there's, and then of course the last time he was in the field, he tripped over a rock, and that pretty much finished his field career. So you should have stayed behind the computer terminal and been a good geophysicist. So I appreciate interacting with you. The breadth of your knowledge and background and interactions have been just amazing. And again, to me, what's most inspiring is that one can reinvent themselves so often and be successful in every one of those successive fields. So thank you very much for working with me these years.
I didn't know I was going to have this opportunity. This is fantastic. I promise to be very short. My name is Bob Shellhorn. Carlos was my advisor from 82 to 82 and a half, 83 to 87. 3 points I want to make. Point number one, I would never have graduated had it not been for Carlos. We were laughing about that on the way over. Huge influence in my life, both to the good and to the bad. Point number two, I remember Carlos and I, when I was working for Carlos as an RA, that we would get in these pitch battles where Carlos would be in my face. He'd be screaming. Saliva would be coming out of his mouth. He'd be so mad and screaming and yelling because I did something wrong. And I was like just taken aback. I mean, I've never been chewed on like this before. And he'd go in his office, he'd slam the door because I was right across the hall from him. And like 5 minutes later, he'd come back and says, "Hey, you want to get lunch?" He taught me an incredible lesson that it is never personal. Truly an incredible lesson. And my kids don't understand that today, but it's never personal. Third quick story is that back when we were working a lot together and doing a lot together, and I don't remember, it was before Carlos got pulled out of the ditch on the interstate or the highway over here, before that time when he was one of the previous times that he'd passed away, but he's still here. But we used to go to dinner occasionally. My wife and Amy and I would go with Kathy and Carlos to eat dinner. And we'd go to, on Coit, Taffy's, famous Taffy's. Nothing special, but that's where they never, I went to Carlos' house one time, they'd never eaten in their house ever. I don't think they ever had food ever, and they always went out to eat. I was just stunned by this. Well, anyway, so we go to Taffy's to eat dinner, and I call my wife, she's going to meet us there. He calls Kathy, Kathy's going to meet us over at Taffy's one day. We're sitting there, a waitress comes up, she says, "Hey." She says, "Are you waiting for me?" "Yeah, we're waiting for our wives." "Okay, well, do you anything you want?" Carlos looks over at the little cardboard sign sitting on the table. It's got a piece of pie on it. And he says, "Yeah." He says, "How fast can you get me a piece of pie? Because my wife's not here." Waitress brings him a piece of pie. He eats it. Plate's gone. Kathy and Amy show up. "You gonna eat dinner?" "Yeah, we're eating dinner." We had appetizer, we had dinner. Waitress comes over and she goes, "Are you all gonna have dessert?" "Yeah, I'll have dessert." And he eats another piece of pie. I don't think Kathy's ever heard that story. 2 pieces of pie, one before she got there. Anyway, Carlos, you're fantastic. Can't believe you're still alive. We're thrilled to be here. Celebrate your successes for sure. Anyway.
My name's David Kennedy. I was maybe Carlos's first graduate student at UTD, followed Mr. Phelps from TCU. And I would not have made it had it not have been for Carlos. And I'm not a very good raconteur, but I can share a few things that you might appreciate. I mean, we've heard that Carlos was disorganized. And I learned how to become an expert in Fortran computer programming after one night, an all-nighter, next to his office. We had a bunch of data to contour. So we taped together paper and we were down on our hands and knees all night because Carlos had to have it the next day for a conference or something like that. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm never going to do this again. So I learned, I wrote a computer program to do contouring, and I never had to do it again, and that taught me a lot about Fortran programming. They let me into UTD. I went to Georgia Tech and got a degree in physics, but and actually it was before great inflation, so 2.7 was not a bad GPA. It was upper third of the class. But Ron Ward and Carlos were looking, or not Carlos, but anyway, I think it was Ron. He said, well, your undergraduate GPA is not really spectacular, but you can come and give it a try for a semester, and if you can hack it, why, you can stay. So they let me stay, and I was with Carlos for 4 years. And the night that I remember, other than the one I just told you about, was we were visiting someone at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, overnighting there, and it was me and another graduate student whose name I've forgotten, and Carlos, and he was mindful of his budget because he had all three of us in this Fleabag motel room, and Carlos has a deviated septum and he snores, and I'm a light sleeper. And I don't know how I made it through the night. I had to get up and put on my clothes and leave the room, and you can see that I have survived. But that was my experience in the field with Carlos. But Carlos, thanks for everything that you made possible for me. I appreciate it.
From 88 to 91. But before that, I think, Mr. Kennedy, that map that you were taping together was for me, because he was consulting for me before I went to graduate school. We had a small exploration company doing gravity work in Virginia and Georgia, and so Carlos provided a lot of paper copy gravity maps for us in those states back in the early 80s. So Carlos and I go back to about 1981, and so the crash hit in 86, 87, decided to go to graduate school. Carlos and I were friends. He used to carry my books, and then I carried his books as his student. So we did, indeed, Carlos had the ability of jumping tracks. We did gravity, magnetics, and did some really cool stuff in the Triassic basins on the East Coast with multiple methods. And then when 88 hit, then gravity no longer existed, and that kind of worked for industry partners. And so we did GPS before GPS was cool. And so we did Nevada test site, we did Baja California, and we did New Zealand, doing plate motion studies. And it was just very cool work. So one thing that was already mentioned, that the great affection that his students had for Carlos. Carlos is a servant. For all of the students. So he served us as our mentor. So I think that's why I'm here, is just to show appreciation for his generosity when I was a student. So, thank you.
Okay. Well, my name's Holly Hunter, and I got my bachelor's in '84, and finally got my master's in '95. So, Carlos was my advisor. And, I was trying to struggle what kind of master's I wanted to do. I first thought, get one in computer science, and that was so boring I couldn't finish it. But I was taking a master's class from Carlos in gravity, And it just so happened that the company I was working for was acquiring a 95 square mile 3D seismic survey in the Ouachitas in the Arcoma Basin. And Carlos goes, "Oh my God, all those surveyed stations. We have to collect gravity data." I'm like, "We have to. Do you realize?" I'm like, we want to take the whole class and collect a line. And so it's like, well, let me ask my boss if we could do that. So sure enough, I asked my boss and that I was working for, and so we load up all the vans. Like a month later, we collect one long line of gravity and magnetics data, and all the students took all that data and processed it and integrated it and loaded it and modeled it, and they would ask questions. We'd ask questions like, "Well, Carlos, what do you think this anomaly means? I mean, look at this big anomaly." I don't know, model it and find out. Just model it. So anyway, that was a good lesson to learn. But so he convinced me. He said, "You've got all these stations, thousands. You've got to collect gravity data. You should do your thesis on this." And I thought, hey, that's a good idea. Carlos is such a nice person, and I really like him. He's got this magnetism about him, and he really loves the science, and he really loves his students. And so I went to Carlos and I begged him, please, 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 can I please be your student? He goes, "Well, okay, we'll see." And I went, "Please let me be your student." Because I liked, everybody likes Carlos, right? And so my thesis was collecting, this gravity magnetics data over this giant survey. And so we would look around. We needed students to do the work, so we would try to get all, $15 an hour. I mean, hey, come collect gravity data, magnetics data, and we'll pay you $15 an hour cash, free transportation. And we would get people for maybe a day, and then they would quit. And it was like, what the heck is going on here? It's like Carlos would go, "Well, they don't like the snakes or the ticks." And so Carlos found Jody. She was another graduate student. I don't think she finished, but she was another one of Carlos's students, and Jody was about my height. And Jody made it all the way through, helping me collect 1,400 gravity stations. And Jody made it through because she had a truck, 4-wheel drive truck, an attack German Shepherd, and she had a 9mm Glock with 2 clips. And you're going like, "Why do you have this gun?" And Jody goes, "Well, hey, the surveyors were out there and they ran across this marijuana farm, or they saw a cougar out there or whatever, so you really needed a gun." So I went and got a .38 Special, and I had a gun. So, but one day, Jody and I were standing around, taking the final station reading, and Carlos goes, "Well, Jody," she said something about, she was mangling, messing around with her gun, and she had 2 clips. And Carlos goes, "Well, Jody, why do you have 2 clips?" And she goes, "You never know when you have to shoot the entire family." So anyway, Jody and I, we collected all this gravity data. No guys made it through because they were scared of the snakes and the ticks. Oh yeah, so Sheila, right. So it's all women that had the guts to get through the snakes and the ticks and stuff. So anyway, I got the thesis done, and I want to thank you, Carlos, because you taught me a lot. You taught me to figure things out, to never quit, to learn how to integrate data, and to not just guess, to model the data. And over the past 20 years, I've been able to make a very, very good living in big oil integrating data. So I want to thank you very much for allowing me to be your student.
So, if our time with Carlos could be summarized in one word, I would say gratitude, because he doesn't view students based on gender or race or ethnicity, background, and so we always ended up with the most just crazy diverse group of really tough as nails people from all over the world. And just the level of support and help that Carlos gave us, instead of just leaving us on our own, he's always been there to give us guidance and support, especially in situations where we were about to give up or hit a stumbling block. So if anything, I just want to say thank you so much, because I don't think any of us would be where we are today if it wasn't for Carlos.
My name's Tara Bansky. I was Dr. Aiken's last PhD student, and I have three main things I really remember from my time with him. One of them was he's the biggest feminist in the department. He will back you up 100%, and he was also our biggest advocate as well. But two different times when we were in the field, let's see, one time with Becky here, we had a little encounter with Homeland Security. And I was essentially I was the one who had the first encounter with them, because I was the one who went around the rock face and saw him. And they looked at me and were like, "You get over here." And all I could remember just going is, "Dr. Aiken," because I was immediately panicking. The second, luckily we didn't go to jail, so he was able to get us out of that situation. There was a misunderstanding with the permit. But the second major one was we were in the Nevada desert, and this is what ended his fieldwork tenure afterwards with that, because he tripped and fell and injured his leg. So myself and Mansour, who unfortunately wasn't able to be here today, we drove him 3 hours to the hospital afterwards, and I told him right then and there if I didn't finish my PhD with him that I was going to be extremely angry, because I saved his leg with that particular adventure. So we had a lot of fun in the field. I mean, we went out and did things in Oklahoma, etc., but no major big trips afterwards like that. And it was always, you never knew what you were going to get into, is what it came down to. You really didn't know. And so it was always a blast to work with him. And I really appreciate everything you taught us and everything you advocated on our behalf. Thank you, Dr. Aiken.
I didn't really want to talk because I have a cold, but they make me look bad. So I was Carlos's very last student, master's degree. And fast tracked. He actually talked me into fast tracking because I was going to take a break. I have a family, and so I had spent enough time away from them trying to finally finish my bachelor's degree, even though I was pushing 40. And Carlos talked me into it. I never felt like I was good enough to. It's a lot of work. I don't know if I can do this. And Carlos, get your ass in the fast track. Come on, what are you talking about, right? But I got into Carlos's lab very early on. I was a transfer student from Richland College coming in, and I had gotten on an NSF research grant trying to encourage college students to transfer into STEM. And Carlos was the only one around that summer. So I have to say, I'm sorry, Carlos was not my first choice, simply because I didn't know what he did. But as everybody knows, when you first talk to Carlos, after 10 minutes, you really want to do what Carlos is doing because it's really cool, and it ended up being very cool, and that's why I wanted to work with Carlos. But within a month of coming in to Carlos's lab, my niece was murdered, and I don't know that I could have kept going if it wasn't for that man, because a lot of stuff happened. I've been with Carlos 7 years now. And over 7 years, I don't exaggerate if a lot of times the only way I got to school was because of him. I knew he was in the lab. I could always vent on him. I could always come in and complain about all the work, and he'd just be all like, "What's your problem? Just get it done," But I did it. And the last year was tough, wasn't it, for us, Carlos? I was going out in the field when I found out that you were in the hospital, and I spent the whole time in bouts of crying, because what the hell was I going to do without you? quite frankly. I didn't know how I was going to finish. But we came back and buckled down, and we got your students through your classes. I worked with Lionel, another student of his, and got everybody through. And I finished. And now, I'm teaching at Richland, and I'm happy as can be. And Carlos still goes, I knew you could do it. I knew that was the perfect thing for you. But really, Carlos, thank you so much for getting all of us through, for being there for us. And we hope that in some way we've been there enough for you too. Because as much as we need you, I think you need us too. But honestly, my kids always ask about you and want to know how you're doing. But I don't think I can say anything else. But thank you. Thank you, sir.
Hey, this is Miao. So I guess I never actually heard so many stories about Carlos, and it's all together today. As a foreign student, I actually really appreciate Carlos because in China there's a lot of reputations about how scary get degrees in US. This is such a great country. And the first time I come here, I met Carlos, and half year later, I actually got back to celebrate my new year. So before my vacation, so Carlos actually asked me the question, will you come back? So it's kind of curious, okay, why you ask me that question? So then later on, I find out there's two other actually Chinese students go back to China and they never come back. I guess they probably married or whatever life going on in their personal lives. So he kind of was scary, I'm not coming back. So I said, no, I can come back because you are such a great person. And at the beginning, like in US, it's such a culture shock to me. Everything is so different. I don't think I can speak English quite well because I'm afraid. I'm looking at like blue eyes, like green eyes, so different. I don't know what I can talk the same language. And I remember Alex in the lab, and he talked really fast. I usually need Brian to explain every single sentence after he talks. So Carlos is such a great professor and the life mentor. He actually gives all the students all the opportunities to present in the conference. So it kind of gradually built up my confidence to talk in public. I remember very clear memories is one year in Cincinnati, we have a meeting, and after that we have a drinking events, and that's actually the first time I ever actually drink with geology. I'm maybe not qualified for geoscience department, And then Carlos said, okay, are you okay? And then I said, yeah, I'm okay. Once I'm not okay, I cannot speak English. That's the criteria I define it. So, after that, it's kind of life-changing events, and I feel like more confidence, and I can talk English now. So I don't know what's the magic things in that drink. And yes, so all this is saying is trying to delegate to you, Carlos, and I think this is life change things to me. Without you, I don't know what my life will look like, and it's such a great gratitude to you and appreciations that I actually have ever met you in my life.
I remember the first day that I walked into the geology department at UTD and took Carlos's class, and after about a semester felt very lucky that he actually knew my name. But coming into the geology department and meeting Carlos and Tara and Becky made me feel like it was home again. The GIS department at UTD can sometimes be very intimidating, but at geology it was walking into a family and being able to immediately relax and not have to worry about the stresses that come with doing a dissertation and working full-time and still managing to have a social life somehow, kind of, right? So Carlos, very simply, thank you for making me feel at home at UTD, in Dallas, and feeling relaxed and always being a giant advocate for my work school and in life. And I'm sorry I have to drag you out for one more defense. But I promise the work is worth it, and you have made a huge difference in the way I have approached my career so far.
Hello, I'm Alex Beholder. I wasn't actually one of Carlos's students. I worked with another professor, but I was always in Carlos's lab because he has such a magnetic personality. And when you look at the character of Tom Sawyer, I think that might have been a little bit prophetic for what Carlos was. He had a knack of finding people and getting them to go to the most god-awful places on this planet and carry large loads up the side of a mountain. And in fact, I think the first time that I met Carlos, he looked at me and he said, "You'd be good to carry car batteries and a tripod." And it turns out that was one of my strengths, and probably one of my greatest strengths as a geophysicist. But honestly, without Carlos and his guidance, it went beyond the classroom, the classes. It was how he dealt with people, how he talked to his colleagues, how he respected all of his students, no matter what their backgrounds were, was truly an inspiration. He has an amazing knack. Somebody said earlier, the ability to not see who people are, just who they are as students, to see what they're capable of as a student, and that's it. And Carlos really was that. He pulled together the most raggedy band of people from all walks of life, and somehow they've all wound up into amazing careers. They've grown into great scientists, and beyond, my own life, he's helped change the direction of it. I wouldn't be where I am, and I consider myself very fortunate, largely just because Carlos was able to help guide me along in my most formative years. So with that, I'd like to thank you, Carlos. You've been an inspiration.
Good evening. My name is Manish, and I'm from Orlando, Florida, all the way for Carlos. I came to the US in '94 as a grad student, and I had $300 with me. And Carlos was so nice that he took me in his lab and showed me the GIS, GPS, and all that stuff, and I'm very grateful for that. Today I own two companies. I'm the CEO of a technology company and a healthcare company. And a lot of the entrepreneurship basically came from Carlos. So thank you.
Who are you, Kathy?
Carlos's wife.
And how long have you been married?
52 years.
And you're in a retirement home now?
Yes.
And you have a little dog? What's her name?
Katie.
Katie. Are you happily married though?
Yes.
Okay.
Carlos, I just wanted you to know that you really played a big part in my life, and never really thought I'd go to grad school, but you made it fun, you made it exciting, and we heard a lot of great stories about you today, which were just true as they could be. You have such a magnetic personality, and that was so important to draw your students to you. And then, of course, you were so talented and so interested in all of us. We sure appreciate it. You made a big impact on me. You changed really my professional track, where I was headed, and you actually kept me in the oil and gas business, believe it or not, by letting me finish there. I just really appreciate it. You mean the world to us. Thanks.
Hey, Carlos. I had quite the pleasure tonight in meeting the students you had from the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. And I think what's most amazing is everybody tells the same story. You have such a consistency in your character. You've been wonderful to work with. Everybody's got a positive story, exciting story. Talk about your chaos, and it's just been an absolute pleasure to be involved with. I can speak for myself and for all the other students that have had an opportunity to work with you. You really are an inspiration, and really helped set a lot of our careers and our future life focus. I don't know where I personally would be without your guidance, so I'd like to thank you for that and encourage you to enjoy your retirement.
It's okay. If you can't see me anymore, that's fine. But thank you for everything you've ever done for me, and I just love you to death. Love you again. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carlos.
I really want to say thank you, Dr. Aiken, for all you did, for accepting me as a student.
Howdy, Carlos. I just wanted to say thank you so very much for everything you did for me.
I know I was your first grad student, so I was probably a little bit of an experiment, but you did a great job as far as I can tell. I really enjoyed my work at Los Alamos Labs. You provided that opportunity for me. I then went from there on and got my PhD at Penn State, and without your background, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I also went on and worked for Exploration Data Consultants, EdCon in Denver, and again, your background made that opportunity available for me as well. From there, I started teaching primarily because I wanted to stay in the Denver area. You know about my love for the mountains and that ranching environment, and so after you survived the backpack trip into the Gore Range and you were all game, I want to say that you and Kathy did a great job on that. I'm not sure it was such a fantastic gift for me to take you, but I certainly enjoyed you coming, and I appreciate everything that you've done for me. We then went on into teaching, probably following some of your mentorship, and taught physics and chemistry and GIS and AP Chem and AP Physics for 22 years. Now I'm retired. So just like you, it's time for me to figure out what the next step is. So good luck, Carlos. I'll be taking that step with you. Take care, and I hope things work out for you very well.
Howdy, Carlos. You know, howdy is what they teach us to say at A&M, not UTD. But you know, I wouldn't be at A&M professoring if you hadn't taken me under your wing and given me a chance to succeed in graduate studies, which you did do. And by golly, I should have taken your advice and stayed with you and got my PhD with you, Carlos, but it's water over the dam. So you certainly gave me a good start in professional life, and I've never forgotten it, Carlos. And you never told me you were in the service. I see at your retirement party in the video display, there you are in uniform. I'd certainly like to know what you did and when you did it. Sorry we missed you in Vietnam. You would have been a good one. But you were my company commander at graduate school. So that's all I've got to say tonight, Carlos. Thank you very much for everything you did for me.
Yeah, I think we are the only person here that we know Carlos for a short period of time, maybe about a year. And we had really good memory. He's a really great guy, and we had actually, now he is like our family. I mean, we liked him very much. We spent the time with him during his movement to New House, and also his wife, Kathy. We really love her. She's a really nice person, and we are so happy that we have such a new friend here. Thank you, Carlos, for having us here today, and for all good things that we have, all the memories and all days that we spent it together. Thank you.
It was a pleasure meeting you, knowing you and Kathy, and have a good life.
Yeah, thank you.
Carlos and Kathy. Carlos and I go back to 1982, 81, where he worked the Triassic basins on the East Coast as a consultant. So I paid him. And then the crash came in 87, 88. I went to grad school and he paid me. And so it's an interesting relationship for over many years. He was just an incredibly giving professor in regards to my work, and personally we became good friends. We traded cars, and we went to dinner at Taffy's just like others. And so Carlos, like I said earlier today, he was always a servant to his students instead of the other way around. And so that's why everyone is so emotional about being his student, because he was always a giving guy. And so he had all those attributes that you wouldn't expect from a college PhD professor. And so we love you, Carlos. Anna loves you still, and I think of you often, and So we wish you good health through the coming years. So we'll talk. Bye.
Go toward the light. He turns around, went the wrong way.
Well, I'm still hanging in there. Run the center and talk. Because I have little details like my lack of appreciation of the niceties of the requirements. I've never bothered you before.
I would never have graduated had it not been for Carlos. We were laughing about that on the way over. Huge influence in my life, both to the good and to the bad.
I want to thank all those comments, a lot of them anyway. And can't really argue against what everybody said. Well, that's sort of me, all right. I never intended to teach. I got into teaching accidentally because I had a job at a great mining company and they did away with the positions that weren't filled yet at the last minute. So I said, what the heck, I'll go look for other places to go, do something else, and had teaching positions open. Late in the spring, which is unusual. So I said, I'll try that. I have no idea, never intended to teach. I never took a course that said, how do I teach this? Rutgers had a position open, and New Jersey, and Kathy and I flew there. And it was a terrible position. Money-wise, location-wise, everything. And basically, they said, we don't have anything you can do, but they have a foreign student, and you teach them how to do something with nothing in their country. That'd help. I said, well, that didn't seem like a positive way that we could go. And they offered me the job before I left. And so Kathy and I went back to Tucson, and then she picked up the mail. And there was a letter there from Southern Florida saying that they had a position I applied for that it was still open. And Kathy said something like, give up Florida for New Jersey? Never.
So she helped guide me in my choice of that sort of thing. And so I eventually got to Fort Worth at TCU, because it had a position open, and I went there, and I thought it was a place I could go to learn if I could do it. And it turned out to be a reasonable place to go there. And then I ran into this guy, Ron Ward from UTD, at a meeting, and Jack Hermansford Brown had introduced me to him before, a meeting before, and he said, so he ran into me and said, UTD is looking for a position for somebody like me. And I said, how about me? And so I applied. The first thing that impressed me was, at TCU they were bitching all the time about how I dressed. But just very casually. And they like you have to wear a tie when you teach, and I said, no way. So I come to UTD and I interviewed, and Anton Hales interviewed me. That's like being interviewed by God. I mean, seriously, he'd read the paper in front of me and then ask me questions. And get a reference and say, now there's somebody I'd like to hire. Oh, this isn't going to work out very well at all. And not knowing that the fact was they were positive about me, I guess, because they did hire me. But being considered by somebody like Anton Hales, who practically invented geophysics and several continents and all that sort of thing, it sort of may impress me. He says I'm that good, maybe I am. And UTD walked in the door, and UTD handed me 2 PhD students, Sung Fai Lai and Ran Hong. Oh, okay. And John Ferguson was taking inversion courses and so on like that at SMU. And he mentioned these courses that this guy Wayne Peoples was teaching, and I said, well, that's what my guy's got to learn, because I'm not that familiar with that area. So they took the courses from him and ended up doing their PhDs on it. And that's how I met John Ferguson. And besides the Yucca Flat thing, and but on top of that, Yucca Flats, I mean, with Ferguson, we had Ron Ward all of a sudden quit, went to the oil industry. But, oh God, it was me and Mark Landisman. Oh, shit. People who were in the department understand my comment. So I immediately said, we're going to get it. I said, John Ferguson, because he was a postdoc by then at SMU, and I called and says, can you come and save us? And he came and took a position, and then competed for the position, and was considered as good as anybody else in the world. And the thing is that the students I walked in the door with were fantastic. Let me take that back. A couple of students I recruited were disasters. So I stopped recruiting them and let them show up. And that's not an exaggeration. And if I've been successful at all, it's because the students are so damn good. I mean, I put them in impossible situations and terrible environments and all that kind of stuff, and they come out the other end. And that's my success, is because of the students are so good. And I interacted with a lot of faculty too. And like Bob Stern and John Ferguson, who I make all my students take courses, they're terrified of them. But I tell them, you got to learn anyway. Don't be terrified, because it seems that terrible. And I stick them in the courses anyway. And they all learn from it, and they all gain great. And I worked with most of the faculty one time or another. With George and Megan, we did that project up in the Fair and Sandstone. We did a big project doing laser mapping and GPS on these surveys and combine it all together. It was a fantastic experience, and so on. And I ended up, well, I worked with several of the faculty members. Him and Willie Matt, he's here, and he never liked to work with geologists. Sorry, he didn't think we belonged in the physics department. And we had an office next door, and I never talked to him for 3 years. Then a project from AID came along, Honduras, and it was both on the same project. And so he was doing the tectonics and geology, and I was doing the gravity magnetics and seismic, not seismic, gravity magnetics. And the data was really cool data, and I presented the results I got, and Willie thought it was great because it actually agreed with what he thought. It was great working with him. And like I said, I worked with many of the faculty, and it's world-class faculty, as good as any place. I try to steal their students sometimes. And sometimes I succeed, and most times I don't. But you can't do badly. If I train them, they have to use my stuff anyway. And that's why I sort of work with them, because they're using our stuff, our equipment, and the results we get and everything. I intended to retire in June until I died in January. That made me think about things. And I'm really grateful the department stepped up and kept my courses running anyway. Took some of my former students together, and Mortaza, one of the new guys, and they stuck in, and the courses ran these 2 courses, 2 semesters. Did a fantastic job from what I've gathered, talking to people, and it was because the department backed them up. And they couldn't back them up forever. I realized I wasn't going back next semester, so I thought it was time to punt. 77 years old. A lot of my students are retired already. That's not an exaggeration. All retired. So, Brandon Mills is here, works for Ford. Because he's working with Ford, who's doing LiDAR and collision avoidance. And he learned a lot of that stuff from us. Did great work in Saudi Arabia for really horrendous conditions, and did fantastic work, some of the best work ever done any place in the world. But then he wanted to get really into LiDAR and went with one of the Canadian professors back to Canada. So he worked with me for a while, but he asked me if he could go with Canadian, and I encouraged him. I said, well, why not? That's a great idea. So he switched. And he went to Canada, did great, ended up working with a startup company in Silicon Valley. And I said, who's your client? He said, Ford. I said, well, I think they're going to be Ford here pretty much, pretty soon. And they did, now he's with Ford. But it's what he learned here, learning a lot from the faculty here, what happened now. I mentioned him because he heard that I may have a party for my retirement, and he was the first one who said, contact the department, says I'll be there. I thought, well, crap, if he'll do it. A lot of other people will do it, maybe. And so I went down my list, trying to find every student I ever did agree with me or work with me. And I got a lot of them who couldn't come, but found out that they were quite successful in their endeavors. And so it was a real great experience after all. And Bob Stern and John Edwards were the ones who kept saying, really, you should do this. I said, no one do this. They didn't. No one do it. It's harder not to do it than do it. Okay. And they've done a great job. And I've seen people here I haven't seen in 40 years, or 20 years, or 10 years, depending on it, and I really appreciate it. So maybe I found out I really can teach. Didn't know in 1975, but it's worked out well, and we're at a place where my dog's happy, my wife's happy, and I'm happy. So it's time to do stuff. I'm going to be an emeritus, so I have a corner in my lab I still have that they let me keep. And I've got some papers to write with some students that showed up here, and so on. So, and the department's always been made me feel welcome and everything. I don't know if the university can get rid of us, but I'll be there when they get rid of us. They have to throw me out of the lab. But I want to thank the university. We had our ups and downs. I came from a private school at TCU, who made their rules up as they went, to a state school which had rules that the legislature had put together and everything. So I gave a lot of crap to the university, because every time something, I wouldn't get what I wanted, I'd go around them. And go over people's heads is not a good thing. And so I learned that that's not the way to, I built up a legacy on the staff at the university that's Aiken again. I was actually told that at one of the offices, they talked about something, and said, oh yeah, that's, like Aiken. Everybody goes, oh yeah, okay. I learned since then that you shouldn't do that, because you have to work with your staff. And Calvin Edwards is a perfect example of that, where she has been phenomenal in her ability to get things done. And she convinced me to do this along with Bob and so on. And it's really cool seeing everybody here. And I've been happy. I could have gone other places. Never mentioned that, but I could have gone other places. But I said it will be better than being at UTD, and I always decided no. Maybe I can only teach here. Maybe that's just not an answer to my question. But I'm happy I've been here, and I hope UTD does better, and the university finally realizes what a cool thing they have, because they have a good faculty. They have good students. Find the success of all the students are so damn good. And it can't possibly be me. It's got to be the students. So I want to thank everybody who put this together. And I'm glad so many of you guys showed up. It's really cool. So thank you very much. And thanks, Ding Wan, for doing all the camera stuff, and PowerPoint stuff, and everything. And he had me babble for an hour on my life that he's going to do something with, and I figured out what he could do with it. But anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's effort here. And because you came, well, thank you.
Carlos and Kathy, I'm closing my eyes now, and I'm thinking of a famous closing scene of a movie that many of us of our generation love to watch. And it is so fitting. Journey to the center of the earth. When they come back, hail to the professor of geology. There's cake. Enjoy. We wish you the very best. Congrats, all of us, from the bottom of our hearts.